this point we know sunscreen is one of the most important products in our skincare routines, but some really good feedback I've received from viewers is that it's not always affordable, especially since it's a product that we have to reapply during the day. So today I'm sharing some of my favorite affordable chemical sunscreens. If you're new to my channel, my name is Susan Yara. I have been in the beauty industry for 2 decades. I started off as a beauty editor. I now have my own skincare line, and I love to talk about skincare and just beauty in general. All right, so first I want to point out when I'm referring to chemical sunscreens, I'm actually referring to chemical filters, otherwise known as organic filters. And the reason why I decided to separate this into its own topic is because I personally think that chemical filters are a lot prettier on the skin. They're more cosmetically elegant, so they are easier to formulate with. You can get this really nice feeling sunscreen, and it tends to look better on all skin tones. So I wanted to really make this its own separate topic because I know some people, myself included, tend to look for chemical sunscreens a lot. If it's going to be in their everyday skincare routine, it tends to look better under makeup. It tends to just feel better. You can even find chemical sunscreens that can take the place of your main moisturizer because they can just feel so much nicer. I know that chemical filters have really been demonized over the last few years, and I think there's a really huge problem with that because we're constantly trying to preach the importance of sunscreen, but then there is a whole set of people that think that sunscreens are really bad for them and causing harm to not just them, but to the environment. And all of that is truly inconclusive, right? We don't really know what effects chemical filters have on the environment. We don't know if it's truly bad or hurting the coral reefs. We know that there might be some correlation, but it doesn't seem like it's a huge impact. Same with the absorption of chemical filters in our blood. I can understand why pregnant women will avoid chemical filters. Their doctors will recommend it to them, and they'll tell them not to use it on their babies and their children. And that makes a lot of sense to me because when you're pregnant, you're just overly cautious in general about everything in your life. You avoid eating things like hot dogs because you're just scared of what it might do, even though we know it's probably going to be fine. So you're much more cautious when you are pregnant, and that's because you don't really know. There's always that little itty bitty chance, and when you're pregnant, you're like, why take any chances? As far as using only mineral sunscreens on your children, that also makes a lot of sense to me. Again, there's always that like, who knows, and they are small, so this is like a lifetime of potentially using these sunscreens on their skin. But 2, mineral sunscreens tend to be a little less irritating, or the chance of irritation is less with mineral sunscreens. So children have really sensitive skin, and it just makes more sense to me to use mineral sunscreens on them. So that's truly where I think mineral filters and mineral sunscreens win over chemical filters and chemical sunscreens. Before I get into the sunscreens, a couple things to know. I only recommend broad spectrum sunscreens, meaning that they protect you from UVA rays and UVB rays. They both do different things to your skin. With UVA, I always think of aging because it's UVA, and UVB, I always think of burning. And when you're inside most of the day, and I still tell you to wear your sunscreen, or that I prefer to use my sunscreen, it's because it's more for vanity reasons, and I'm protecting my skin from the UVA rays because most windows will actually protect you from UVB rays. Another thing, I will mostly only ever recommend an SPF of either 30 to 50. So it's usually within that range. I personally prefer an SPF 50 if I can get that, but like depending on whether I'm gonna be inside or something like that the whole day, or what I'm using the sunscreen for. Like if it's my beach sunscreen, it's absolutely going to be an SPF 50. But if I'm gonna be inside and it's also my moisturizer, then I might go for an SPF 30 and feel totally fine with that. And while I know that I have recommended products, like makeup products that have, like an SPF of 15 or an SPF of 25, I do not consider those products to be my main sunscreen. I always just think of that as like an added benefit of that product, and I think of it as just additional protection on top of my main sunscreen. So now that I got that out of the way, let's get into my favorite affordable chemical sunscreens. I'm gonna come out the gate with my absolute favorite one, and it is by Bondi Sands. This is their Daily Moisturizing Face SPF 50. It has become one of my staples. I didn't even realize how affordable it was until I started using this. The first tube of it I got as PR, so I really had no idea that it was only $10. And the reason why I say like only $10, because I know that's not necessarily affordable for everybody, but considering how amazing this sunscreen is, $10 is truly a great price for this. So for anybody who likes to keep their skincare routine really simple, this is truly one of the most perfect sunscreens to add into your routine. You can use this as your moisturizer and your sunscreen. One of the reasons why you might hear a dermatologist, for instance, say that they don't recommend using a moisturizer with SPF only, it's because they're worried you won't use enough of your sunscreen if that's the way that you're using it, because some people, if they have oily skin, for instance, don't want to have too much moisturizer on their skin, so they might just dab it in areas where they get dry, and that's not the proper way to use your sunscreen. If that's the case, then you don't want to use a one and done moisturizing sunscreen as your only product, because you definitely want to cover every inch of exposed skin. So that's truly something that you need to think about. I love to cover myself in moisturizer and sunscreen because I do have dry skin. This one is super moisturizing. It's really glowy. It's actually not so moisturizing that you can't use a separate moisturizer underneath it. So if you do have dry skin, you can actually double up if you want to. But I think just overall, for most skin types, this is truly an amazing sunscreen that moisturizes your skin as well. A couple of other reasons why I like this: it does not leave any white cast. It looks good on all skin tones. I had everyone on my team give it a try. It looks good on every single one of their skin tones. It's also fragrance free, which I know is very important for a lot of people, especially if their skin gets sensitive to certain sunscreens. This one is fragrance free, so you have less chance of additional irritation from that. It's also water resistant up to 80 minutes. No sunscreen is waterproof, but water resistant to me in a sunscreen is very important too, because if you are sweaty, if it's a humid day, anything like that, it just has a better chance of staying on your skin, which is always a good thing. To me, this truly feels like I'm applying a moisturizer to my skin. In the marketing points, it says that it is non-greasy. I do find it to be a little bit dewy, but it is really fast absorbing in the skin because it truly is very moisturizing, leaves you a little bit dewy, but it's not greasy. Next up is this one from Solimo. It is their Sheer Facial Sunscreen Lotion. This one is SPF 55. This one I found out about by just, searching for affordable sunscreens that people rave about, and this one came up on a ton of different lists. So I decided to give it a try. I ordered it from Amazon, which is where it's available, and it's only like $5. It's like just under $6, I guess. And so I really didn't expect a lot from this because, I don't know, it just seemed too good to be true that it would be that affordable. But it turns out this is actually a really great sunscreen. So this one is also like the Bondi Sands. It's water resistant up to 80 minutes. It is, like I said, SPF 55. The other thing that makes this really nice is that if you are the kind of person who likes to use a separate moisturizer, I'd say that this one is better for that. I did see, like reviews where people said that they use this as their moisturizer, but to me it doesn't really replace a moisturizer because it dries down to more of like almost like a tacky matte finish. So it's definitely not like a dewy, glowy finish that I prefer. And that's one reason why I choose the Bondi Sands over this one, because I do prefer a glowy finish. But for people who prefer more of like a matte finish and a little bit more of a dry down of their sunscreen, that's what this one feels like. It did feel a little bit heavier and tackier than the Bondi Sands, but it's very minimal and it's not anything that would bother me personally, because if you guys don't know, I always set my sunscreens at this point, even if I'm not wearing any makeup. I have learned over the pandemic, especially by like just sitting at my desk all day with no makeup on but tons of sunscreen, that when sunscreen starts to kind of like get into your eyes and irritate your eyes throughout the day, it's because you haven't set it yet. So I take my powder and I actually set my sunscreen all the time, whether I'm wearing makeup or not. So it doesn't really bother me that it has a little bit of just a touch of a thicker feeling to it than the Bondi Sands does. When I say that you can feel it a little bit more, it's very, very minimal. This is a very nice sunscreen. The only other thing that I would point out about this is that it does have fragrance in it. It's in the ingredient list. That said, I don't think it has a recognizable scent. Like, you don't put it on and think, oh, this has a fragrance to it. I personally think that this has more of like a masking fragrance, so it doesn't smell like your typical sunscreen. And again, this one looks great on all skin tones. so next on my favorites list, and probably the most expensive of all the sunscreens I'm gonna talk about today, and that is by Neutrogena. There are actually two versions that I decided to show. This is the Neutrogena Ultra Sheer Face Mist Sunscreen, and then this is the Neutrogena Invisible Daily Defense Face Mist Sunscreen. The reason why I wanted to point these out is because people always ask me how I reapply my sunscreen during the day, and I've pretty much decided that my favorite way to reapply my sunscreen is with a spray sunscreen. It's hard to find nice ones that are affordable though. So while these are still above $15, they're under $20, and they're much more accessible because you can get these at the drugstore. Neutrogena is sold all over the place, and they also just happen to be really nice. Like, it's not even that they're accessible and at drugstore pricing. It's more that I think these actually compete with some of the best of the spray sunscreens out there and that I have actually recommended. The reason why I want to point out both of them is because there are definitely slight differences in them, and it really comes down to what you prefer and your skin type. So let me tell you why I like both of them first, and then I'll point out the differences. I really think that one of the things that Neutrogena does very well as a brand is their sunscreens. I love the different types of sunscreens they offer. I love the feel of a lot of their sunscreens, and these ones just really prove like how good Neutrogena is with sunscreen. So both of them are SPF 50, and then the other one is actually SPF 55. They're broad spectrum, like I said. They feel really nice on the skin, which is very important to me for a mist or like a spray sunscreen. And the actual mist on these sunscreens is very nice and light. When you mist it, it doesn't feel like you're just getting splashed in the face with liquid. It actually feels like it gives you a nice even layer when you spray it onto your face. So the actual nozzles on this are very nice, and the way that the liquid comes out feels very, very nice and light like a mist. So that's one of the most important things to me when it comes to these types of spray sunscreens. The Invisible Daily Defense Face Mist is a little bit more expensive, and that's because they do put some antioxidant ingredients in this. But truly the big difference with these two sunscreens is that this one dries down to more of a matte finish, like a sheer, kind of like a dry matte finish. And this one dries down with more of like a hydrating, kind of glowy finish. Again, I have dry skin, so this tends to be a little bit more of my preference. I even think this is good to set your makeup with. I would still recommend setting both of these sunscreens around your eyes with some powder so it doesn't eventually get into your eyes. So this one is a little hydrating, it leaves a dewy glow to your skin, and it's my preferred of the two spray sunscreens from Neutrogena. But this one dries down to more of a matte finish, and it feels a little bit lighter on the skin. So for anybody that feels like they have oily skin or they want more of that matte finish, this is the one that you're gonna go for. A couple of other things to point out, they have fragrance. Again, I don't really smell like this very notable scent. It's not gonna smell floral or anything like that. I think it's more of like a masking fragrance, so it doesn't smell too much like a sunscreen for people that hate that smell. So if that's important to you, then that's something to, just keep in mind. The other thing is that one of the main ingredients in both of these sunscreens is alcohol denat or SD alcohol. And the reason for that is because it's a solvent for these sunscreens. The reason why they're able to, spray out so nice and light and feel very light on the skin is because they use alcohol in them. It's actually something that's used in a lot of different sunscreen products. So, it's, again, I want to just point that out to people. I don't want you to be freaked out if you see alcohol on the ingredient list. It's really necessary for these types of products. All right, so I have two more sunscreens on my list. They're a little bit more expensive, still about that $15 range, so still fairly affordable. What I think makes them a little bit different and worth the price is that they actually feel more like skincare to me, meaning that they actually have other beneficial skincare ingredients in them, not just moisturizing or hydrating ingredients in them. These ones actually do have a little bit more of like a skincare aspect to them, and you'll see why. The other thing to point out is that they're in that SPF 30 to SPF 35 range, which is totally fine and totally acceptable, but it's more so what I would prefer to use when I know I'm just gonna be inside most of the time. They're both moisturizers, so they're really just nice feeling sunscreens, and they also happen to be moisturizers. This is the Cetaphil Daily Facial Moisturizer with Sunscreen, so they really point out that this is your moisturizer. I think this feels nice and light. It's made for combination skin. Cetaphil is also a great company because they keep sensitive skin in mind, so it is fragrance free. It's really really hydrating, it's really nourishing to the skin. They even have ingredients like niacinamide in here that, you know, I love because it also helps to support your skin barrier. So this is just an overall really great feeling moisturizer that happens to be a sunscreen too. I'm a full believer that people will use sunscreen more if they actually enjoy it, if it feels nice and it feels like it is truly part of their skincare routine. All of the sunscreens that I've mentioned feel really great. This one and the other one I'm about to mention just feel even better, and that's because they truly were made to be more like your moisturizer and happen to have SPF in them. And then there's this one from Aveeno. This is their Positively Radiant Sheer Daily Moisturizer. It's an SPF 30 and it feels amazing on the skin. It feels like a nice, light, hydrating moisturizer. It almost feels like a little like drink of water for your skin. It feels really good when you put this on. It also has this like soybean complex that Aveeno claims to really help brighten your skin and even your skin tone, which you guys know that I always really love. This one in my opinion feels the nicest of all the sunscreens that I mentioned, but of course it's only an SPF 30. Another thing to point out is that it does have a notable fragrance in it. It's not a masking fragrance, it is actually a fragrance that it has in this where you'll notice it. And it also has mica in it, which in my opinion makes it look really pretty on the skin, but I know that some people like to avoid mica in their skincare products too. So again, this one is a beautiful moisturizer. It also has SPF 30 in it, and it also has that little bit of brightening effect to it. So again, it's a little bit more like it's part of your skincare routine. So if you're one of those people that really hate sunscreen, but you're really trying your hardest to get into it and make it a daily habit, then one of these would be a great option for you. And like all the other sunscreens I mentioned in this video, they also look great on all skin tones. This one just happens to have that luminous look. So those were my favorite affordable chemical sunscreens. I have an affordable mineral sunscreens video coming as well for people that are looking for mineral filters, but I just happen to really love these sunscreens. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments below. If there are any affordable chemical sunscreens that you love, be sure to tell us because we're always on the lookout for them. I know I definitely am always looking for great sunscreens in general. You can find me on Instagram. I'm at Susan Yara, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.